Cuba, the third round of peace talks between the Colombian government and the National Liberation Army is set to conclude on Friday after the negotiating body requested a 24-hour extension to finalize the agreements. In the United States, smoke from raging wildfires in Canada disrupts air travel in the Northeast for the second day. And 60 people have now been hospitalized following the destruction of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant in the Kherson region. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The third cycle of peace negotiations between the Colombian government and the National Liberation Army will conclude on Friday in Havana, Cuba. The closing of the third round of negotiations was first scheduled to be held on Thursday. However, the negotiating body requested a 24-hour extension to finalize the last details of the agreements. The latest round of peace talks began on May 2nd, hosted by the Cuban government and led by Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez Parrilla. In it, both sides stated their hope to reach a ceasefire agreement to end decades of violence in Colombia. President Gustavo Petro announced he will travel to the Caribbean island for the closing ceremony, emphasizing that reaching a ceasefire agreement could mean the beginning of an era of peace for the South American nation. Cuba's Deputy Foreign Minister Carlos Fernandez de Cosio rejected the allegations published on the Wall Street Journal on Thursday that Havana and Beijing had secretly agreed to set up a Chinese electronic eavesdropping facility on the Caribbean island that could monitor communications across the southeastern United States.
The Wall Street Journal published on June the 8th a totally untrue and unfounded information, according to which there allegedly exists an agreement between Cuba and China in the military area for the establishment of a supposed espionage facility. Notwithstanding Cuba's sovereign rights in the area of defense, our country is signatory to the Declaration of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace, subscribed in Havana on January 2014. On the basis of that declaration, we reject all foreign military presence in Latin America and the Caribbean, including the numerous military bases and troops of the United States, and especially the military base that illegally occupies a portion of our national territory in the province of Guantanamo.
During his statement, Fernandez de Cosio denounced that the Wall Street Journal's allegations were a justification by the U.S. government to reinforce the blockade against Cuba.
Our fallacies promoted with a malicious intention to justify the unprecedented reinforcement of the economic blockade, destabilization, and the aggression against Cuba, and to deceive public opinion in the United States and around the world.
In Ecuador, the National Service for Comprehensive Care for Adults deprived of liberty and adolescents offenders reported on Thursday about new incidents in a prison. According to the institutions, the riot was registered in the Provincial Deprivation of Liberty Center of Pichincha, number 1, located in Quito. The information was confirmed by the National Police, whose agents worked to control the situation after reporting the incident. The SENAI communicated that thanks to the timely actions of the uniformed officers, tranquility was restored in the prison and no death or injuries were reported. In Ecuador, the prison system has been in a crisis for several years. According to the Permanent Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, since 2019, more than 14 massacres have been recorded in these centers, in which more than 600 persons deprived of their liberty lost their lives. On Thursday in the United States, smoke disrupts air travel in northeastern U.S. for the second day. Smoke from wildfires in Canada affected air traffic at major airports such as Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, LaGuardia, New York, and Newark. New Jersey are among the hardest hit. Visibility problems caused by the smoke blanketing the region's sky prompted the Federal Aviation Administration to temporarily hold flights to Philadelphia and LaGuardia and delay all flights to Newark, although there were delays in the morning, there have been few cancellations so far at these airports, according to air traffic monitoring website FlightAware. In this context, smoke from the Canadian fires has drifted south along the east coast of the U.S. It's affecting large parts of the states of Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and the federal capital, Washington, where hazardous air quality has been declared by several authorities. Meanwhile, NASA has released satellite images showing smoke from the wildfires reaching as far south as Alabama. According to Norwegian officials, smoke from Canadian wildfires that have enveloped parts of the US and Canada in a thick haze could reach Norway on Thursday. Atmosphere and climate scientists at the Norwegian Institute for Climate and Environmental Research used a forecasting model to predict how the smoke will travel through the atmosphere. Smoke has moved over Greenland and Iceland since June 1st, and observations in southern Norway have recorded increasing concentration of aerosolized particles. The U.S. East Coast has experienced dangerous levels of pollution from wildfires burning in Canada and requested assistance in fighting more than 400 fires across the country. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. The number of people hospitalized after the destruction of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant in the Kherson region has increased to 60. According to a statement made to a local television station, Kherson's deputy governor, Tatiana Kuzmich, said the hospitalized are mainly people with reduced mobility. In the early hours of June 6, part of the Kakhovka hydroelectric dam on the lower course of the Dnieper River suffered severe structural damage, allegedly due to an attack or act of sabotage, with Moscow and Kiev blaming each other. The damage caused an uncontrolled discharge of water from the Kakhovka reservoir onto both banks of the river, controlled respectively by Russian and Ukrainian troops. Vladimir Lentyev, mayor of Nova Kakhovka, where the Kakhovka hydroelectric dam that was destroyed by the Ukrainian armed forces is located, according to Russia, says that the water level continues to drop in the city.
The water keeps going away, not as fast as we would like, but it has definitely gone down by 1.2 meters. The water is receding slowly. We predict the process will be faster. Today, evacuation and rescue operations continue in Nova Kakhovka. Today, we have begun pumping out the water. We have received additional generators, motor pumps, so we will start the restoration process.
On Thursday, the Russian Minister of Defense, Sergei Shoigu, reported that Ukraine made a new attempt to break through the Russian defense line in Zaporizhia. The officer said that up to 1,500 Ukrainian troops and 150 armored vehicles tried to break through the defenses. Shoigu also stated that the enemy was detected in time by reconnaissance forces and a preemptive attack was launched with artillery, air and anti-tank weapons. In addition, he pointed out that the Kiev regime losses after a 2-hour battle amounted to 30 tanks, 11 armored personnel carriers, and up to 350 soldiers, and that the enemy's reserve forces, specially trained for this breakthrough, did not achieve their goal.
This morning at 1:30 a.m. in the Zaporizhia area, the enemy attempted to break through our defense with the forces of the 47th Mechanized Brigade, numbering up to 1,500 people and 150 armored vehicles. In all 4 directions, the enemy was stopped and retreated after heavy losses. As a result of the 2-hour battle, the enemy lost 30 tanks, 11 infantry fighting vehicles, up to 350 personnel.
On Thursday, the World Health Organization reported on the delivery of supplies and enhanced surveillance for the possible emergence of cholera virus and other diseases following the contamination of water after the Kakhovka dam disaster in southern Ukraine. According to WHO, the threat of the possible impact of diseases in the affected area is a matter of concern. WHO also indicated that cooperation with the authorities is already underway to strengthen preventive measures to address this situation and to organize the necessary health assistance in case of an emergency. In this regard, Dr. Teresa Zakaria, the WHO Technical Officer for Emergency Response, reported the detection of cholera bacteria in the Ukrainian environment from several samples analyzed, although no human cases have been registered. The official also noted that the organization continues to assist and to be alert towards the multiple risks of the flood.
Environmental samples do show that the pathogen exists in the environment, so that constitutes a risk. So at any given moment, indeed, we could start finding cases. We have been working very closely with the Ministry of Health of Ukraine to make sure that mechanisms are in place to enable the importation of vaccines as soon as they are required. So the preparedness activities are ongoing, knowing that the risk of cholera is present.
European nations agreed Thursday to revise the bloc's rules in order to share the hosting of asylum seekers and migrants more equitably. The agreement was announced by Sweden, which holds the bloc's rotating presidency, after a fraught day of negotiations between European Union interior ministers in Luxembourg. The deal, which needed approval from a majority of countries representing at least 65% of the bloc's population, comes after years of wrangling over asylum policy. The proposal calls for compulsory help between the bloc's countries, but with an option of doing that in one of two ways. The priority is for the bloc's countries to share the hosting of asylum seekers, taking in many that arrive in nations on the bloc's outer rim, mainly Greece and Italy. The agreement said nations that refuse would instead be required to pay a sum of 20,000 euros per person into a fund managed by Brussels. Poland and Hungary voted against the proposals, while Bulgaria, Malta, Lithuania and Slovakia abstained.
These files are central parts of a common European migration policy that manages migration and is fully grounded in European values and international law. The complex negotiations have been ongoing for many years. Hard work during several presidencies. Today we have taken a historic step. After many years of negotiations, we have today taken this important step towards a stable and sustainable legislation on migration.
teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, our 461, and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcasts. One final short break, we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the South. China's government reiterated that Asia is opposed to NATO's expansion and stressed that most countries oppose creating military blocs. During his regular press briefing, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin noted that the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is obsessed with eastward expansion in the Asia-Pacific region, while the Atlantic Alliance repeatedly insists that it is not seeking geographical expansion. The spokesman reiterated that the attitude of most countries in the Asian region is very clear. They oppose the emergence of military blocs in the region and do not welcome NATO's expansion, and that NATO is trying to intervene in regional affairs and provoke a bloc confrontation. Wang Wenbin also dismissed as fake news allegations that Chinese fentanyl precursors are being smuggled into the U.S. and urged U.S. authorities to strengthen internal drug control and not to blame other countries.
It is purely fake news to say that Chinese fentanyl precursors are being smuggled to the U.S. through Mexico. The root cause of the U.S. fentanyl crisis lies in itself, and the fundamental solution is to reduce domestic demand and domestic supply. What the U.S. should do is to reflect on itself, strengthen domestic control over prescription drugs, intensify publicity on the dangers of drugs, and reduce domestic drug demand, instead of smearing other countries and shifting the blame onto others.
On Thursday, India's central bank kept interest rates on hold for its second straight meeting, citing easing inflation pressures, but warned about an uncertain global outlook. Bank Governor Kakhovka Das announced in a webcast that the benchmark repurchase rate was left at 6.5% by the Reserve Bank of India. Inflation hit a peak of 7.79% in April last year, well above the RBI's target range of 2 to 6%, before slowly easing to 4.7% in April. India's economy expanded 6.1% in January-March, the final quarter of the fiscal year, to take annual growth to 7.2%. Despite easing inflation, Tusk cautioned that a key risk factor was the warming El Niño weather phenomenon, which could weaken the monsoon and leave crop prices stuck in inflation.
The continuation of stance of with that headline inflation still remains above the target, and being within the tolerance band is not enough. Our goal is to achieve the target of 4% going forward. As Mahatma Gandhi had said, the ideal must not be lowered. The continuation of stance of withdrawal of accommodation should be seen from this perspective. And policy normalization globally is far from complete. Headline inflation across countries is on a downward trajectory, but is still high and above the targets. Labor markets in many countries are tight, and demand is rotating back from goods to services. Hence, central banks across the world remain on high alert and watchful of the evolving conditions, even though many of them have tempered their rate hikes or even taken a pause.
An independent United Nations International Commission warned that Israel is trying to indefinitely maintain the illegal occupation of Palestinian territory. The Commission said in a report that the Israeli forces tried to silence the accusations made by humanitarian and social organizations through coercive actions. According to the study, the UN Expert Commission warned that this practice by the Israeli occupier seeks to violate the human rights of the Palestinian people and to break the activism of the humanitarian organizations. The official said the report was submitted to the United Nations Human Rights Council in order to let the international community know the intentions of Tel Aviv, which does not cease in its siege of the Palestinian people. At least 11 people were killed in Afghanistan on Thursday after an attack during the funeral of a governor who was assassinated in recent days. The Interior Ministry reported that the attack occurred at the Nabawi Mosque in the city of Faizabad, where 30 people were also injured. The authorities indicated that everything points to the fact that the attack was perpetrated by extremist groups who detonated explosives while the crowd was accompanying the funeral ceremony. Following this incident of violence, police cordoned off the streets affected by the detonation, while commercial establishments closed their doors. President Cyril Ramaphosa visits the community of Hamanskral, north of Pretoria, following the cholera outbreak. The president is accompanied by several ministers and deputy ministers, including the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Thembi Kadigman, the Minister of Health, Dr. Joe Fala, and the Minister of Water and Sanitation, Senso Chunu. The president stated that the outbreak of cholera in the community of Hamanskral has caused devastation and that 3 spheres of government and their agencies and non-governmental organizations have been seized with instituting mitigating measures to contain the spread of cholera.
Our people have the right to water, to clean running water. And in this case, we will admit, for we have failed you. We have failed the people of Hamanskral. We have failed you. Because the water that comes out of the Temba waterworks is not fit for human consumption. So we have really dropped the ball for our people here in Tshwane, and I went on as much as to admit that. I'm told now that the incidence of people going into hospitals with cholera has really come down. The investigations are still ongoing to finally determine where the source of this was.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.